So, Saba, thank you for joining us on the Peace Building podcast. It is really a pleasure to be able to give voice to women like yourself and be able to give global voice to women like yourself, who is a younger woman than me and is doing really amazing work. So, hello and welcome.
Thank you so much, Susan.
I like these podcasts to be as personal as possible, and I know you've probably told your story many times, but I think it's really uh, to introduce you to listeners, to tell us who you are, and where you come from, and how do you think that's influenced why we are here today and having this conversation.
Well, thank you so much. It's I think I'll try to summarize these answers. So, but I think it's going to
You don't
take
have
me.
to be too, I mean, we have 45 minutes, but yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that's nice about podcasts is we can be a little bit richer, a little bit more in depth than a 10-minute
Mhm.
interview,
Yeah, so definitely because it's like, who I am and the background is quite, intense, I would say. Because, well, I have experienced what it takes to make a young person want to be a jihadist. I was born in a very small and rural village in the northwest of Pakistan, and that area is deeply religious and deeply traditional.
It's probably, I had Scylla Elworthy on the show who wrote Business Plan for Peace.
Yes.
He describes that part of Pakistan as probably the most dangerous place in the world to be a woman. And I don't know if
Yeah, it is. It is one of the most dangerous places on earth for women, and also, being well. I was raising up. I was taught about warriors who destroyed Hindu temples and churches, and was told that these are my true heroes. My teachers taught me to hate life, believing that this life, current life, is very short. The real life is afterlife, and the earlier I starts that, the luckier I am. So while I grew up, I saw images of abuses and violence against Muslims in Kashmir and Palestine, fueled young people's zeal for jihad, and we were told that it was our religious duty to help Muslims through the violent jihad who were suffering in other countries.
so. You
So
let me slow you down. So you were how many kids in your family?
we are six siblings.
And where do you fall in the lineup?
Number four
Number
in the
4.
middle. Yes.
And so this was so you were born in a town in northwest Pakistan,
Yes, in a village, in
in
a
a
rural
village.
village in northwest of Pakistan. And then I grew up in the city, Peshawar, which the
Okay,
name of the city is Peshawar.
right.
And I studied from public education system, not from the government, but the private school system. And there I was taught about, the hatred. I was taught about, about how this is my duty to fight and engage in violent jihad. And I saw while growing up, I and my siblings, we saw thousands of young people going to fight. We saw, families receiving dead bodies of their loved ones killed in jihad. And these deaths were cherished in the villages and in the northeast of Pakistan. The families were considered holier than others. And just everyone believed that the whole family would be going to heaven, guaranteed. So I, as a young, not as a young, but as a kid, actually wanted my family in heaven too, for sure. And,
So
there
what age? Give us an age at this point that you were aware of that thought.
well, these thoughts were introduced to me from since I, started going to school, maybe from third grade, they start doing, teaching all this. So third, 7, 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But then what and because I was learning so much from this educational system and everything, I also wanted my family to go to heaven, because heaven was, of course, seen as a beautiful thing. And, so the problem was our father. And our father was a human rights activist and a teacher. He didn't believe in any war or any jihad. He just
Was he
believed
the
in peace.
problem or the blessing?
Yeah, of course. But at that time, as a kid, we were thinking, I and my siblings were thinking that he's the problem because he actually overheard all of us, discussing about how we all want to be martyrs and we want to go to, and fight this jihad as young kids. So that's
So
why at that time,
how what was the lineup? Girl, boy, girls, boys? Uh,
so we are all kind of mixed. So the eldest one is sister. Then we have one brother, then one sister, then it's me. then my brother, and then sister.
And where does Gulu lie? Because Gulu lie, I'm going to ask
Galale is second. Is
you second. Okay.
she's the third. She's
She's
the third, but she's like 1 year elder than me. We have
okay.
exactly 1 year difference.
Okay.
So so our father actually, invested a lot of invested in our education. A lot of people and families surrounding us were investing in buying homes and cars and land. And our father was, when he overheard this conversation that we were having, and the influence from the society and generally, especially from our schooling system and our desires to be martyr, he was like, he has to do something immediately for this. And he realized that that his children, his own children, has been indoctrinated
Indoctrinated.
indoctrinated.
Mm-hmm.
So he started a mission of his own to help us unlearn all of these things, and to undo the harm that is already done. So he started actually teaching us about local heroes, the men and the women, uh, who were not using weapons, but who were using their voices, and who, like people like Gandhi and people like Bacha Khan, who is known as the frontier Gandhi, who
Okay,
used.
let me actually back up even further. How did he get these ideas?
So he's an activist, and he used to he was a political activist as well, and a human rights defender. But he learned all of these things by himself, because his own father was dead when he was like 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So he realized all these things in his society, and he himself actually educated himself, and
Mm-hmm.
everything. But I think it's very rare for for men to raise kids like this in the northwest of Pakistan. Usually in the northwest of Pakistan, the way people raise their children and kids are, they spend all of their resources on boys, and they invest their resources on weapons as well, so that when there are family feuds, the son are able to fight with other families, and all that. But our father was very different. He always invested in education for both girls and boys. So that's
What's
why he.
interesting in general about that is, in terms of tracking women and women's empowerment, is so often it's fathers that have really supported their girls in terms of stepping into their leadership. And
Yes.
I mean, I have seen some research about this, but I also just anecdotally see it over and over and over again, that the power that fathers have in terms of helping girls realize how powerful they are.
Yeah, in this, yeah, it's my personal, of course, experience, and also to see that the patriarch of the family, if the patriarch of the family is towards women's empowerment, it really helps the next generation, because definitely at the end, even in our society, the patriarch have a lot of power to decide how their families will go forward, and their next generation. So in our case as well, the patriarch, who is our father of the family, was a human rights defender. He didn't wanted that the patriarchy, the patriarchy to move forward in the family, but he wanted to have a different family. He wanted to have equal rights to both his daughters and son, and that's why the things changed from there. And in all that process, he definitely introduced us to other inspirational women as well, other feminists, other free thinkers,
Like
other.
who? Do you remember?
I do remember a politician, who's now a former politician, but her name is Bushra Gohar. She's a Pakistani former parliamentarian, and women like Rakshanda Naz, he's also now the chair of she's the ombudsperson for the laws against sexual harassment against workplace. So she's the ombudsperson in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, in the northwest of Pakistan. And women like another name is Miraj Humayun, and the women who were heading UN agencies at that time in Peshawar.
Mm-hmm.
So he introduces to very different women, very different women from the society, and
And,
very
and
inspirational.
and Saba, what did your mom think about this?
She's always very supportive towards all these ideas and towards our work. I think without her support, she has never, she has been to school only for like 2 or 3 years. Till third grade, she went to school, and then she was not allowed. She was dropped off because this school was in another village, and the grandfather didn't allow girls for education to go to another school. It was not accessible, and it was not their priority at all to educate their daughters and even their sons. So um, even it's but she can communicate in in basic in English. She can communicate. She understands the issues, and she has been extremely supportive in our work. And there have been a lot of incidents that which I'm going to share later, actually, because now, and what happened especially recently in the past 1 year with my family. And my mother was the one who took the lead on all that. It
Yeah.
was not my father, but my mother, who has been leading. Like, for example, I can share, but I think it will be a little bit more relevant if I share it, a little bit later.
Whatever you like. Yeah.
Yeah. So growing up, as I said, growing up, in all these women that I met, I also met another woman who changed my life, and who, the reason why I started working on peace building, was because when I met this one woman and this story is about her 13 years old son. And like many other young boys, after school, he was also going to the madrasa to learn the Quran. And just like in these typical, in a majority of these madrasas in Pakistan, he was also taught about the importance of violent jihad, and that God comes first and parents come later. So he didn't need it.
You said
His parents.
parents come later?
Yes,
God
yes,
first, parents second. Yeah.
yes. God is always first, and by God I means the violent jihad. That's how they equate that the violent jihad comes first and parents come second.
Mm-hmm.
So of course he didn't needed his parents' permission to go to the jihad. So one day he was disappeared, and then the family received his dead body. He actually went to Afghanistan for the jihad, where he was killed.
Mm-hmm.
So his family was, of course, very, kind of privileged, and very, uh, in terms of, they were very sure that they will go to heaven. But also the mother was very devastated to receive the dead body of a 13-year-old son, in which
I mean, how could you
she
not
didn't
be?
knew.
Mm.
And when I saw that mother being devastated, that was also, that was the moment for me to realize that jihad is not about justice. It's about, it's about pain. There is no glory in that. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, that woman and her son's story, and when I listened to them and I met them, it really affected me, and that was our calling for me and my sister Gulali. And that's how we decided to start our work. And we established Aware Girls, a young women-led organization, and then we formed a Youth Peace Network, in which we stopped young people from getting recruited by the jihadi groups.
Could you
Uh,
say, slow that down? Because I've heard Scylla told me a bit about that work, but it would be interesting. So you were actually going into madrasas and convincing people that the Quran did not support the idea of violent. Uh,
so
is that
Okay.
no?
So what?
You
Yeah.
tell it.
So what we actually have been doing is that we have established this Youth Peace Network, which is a network of young people, in which we work with young people, and we build the capacity of young people as peace builders, and then the young people work with their peers to prevent them from getting recruited by the militant groups. The Youth Peace Network, when it's basically, we started it with like 30 young people, and now we have more than 22 groups active in Pakistan and Afghanistan. But what we are doing through this
Saba,
network
this
is,
started with you and Gulai?
yes,
That's
it all,
amazing. That's
yes.
amazing. I mean, really,
Thank you.
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. We have
Hmm.
been doing this work because we both grew up in conflict. We have witnessed and we have experienced. And of course, our, perspectives are different. We know the realities, we know and we also know the problem, the root causes. So we are addressing the root causes, but also through this network, we are bringing communities together. We are reconstructing the bonds in the communities that were destroyed by the militant groups. But we are bringing communities together of different faiths, different cultures, different ethnicities together on one platform, so that they can, one, collectively build a narrative of tolerance and peace, but also to have a culture of dialogue where people from different religious backgrounds and different point of views can sit together and talk in a safe environment. So we have been doing, to create this conducive environment where there is no space for violent ideologies, and which is more conducive for peace building and coexistence and nonviolence.
So let me, this sounds amazing. And let me back up to something that's, again, more personal, because I think that what you're describing is something that would require you to have a lot of self-confidence, and
Mhm.
a lot of ability to not get afraid. I mean, to maybe be afraid, but to do things anyway. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but
Mhm.
I'm guessing that you often found yourself in scary situations. So I wondered if you could, because I think that part of my objective is that there's obviously a movement all over the world of women, girls waking up, men waking up around gender equality, and yet in the West, I think that women are living a mostly a softer existence. They're more protected from some of the realities that you were faced, right up front with. So I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about your internal, how you've dealt with your own fear, how you've built your own self-confidence, and how you have been able to get out of your own way to be able to do the kind of work that you're just describing.
Yeah, it needs a lot of courage and bravery, and it's not easy. It's very risky to work on these issues in the northwest of Pakistan,
I mean, I will say you couldn't
especially
even talk to me, when I first
yeah,
reached
for
out to you,
three
right?
months, for
Why
almost three
why was
months.
that exactly? What happened exactly?
Yeah, so I'm just about to come to exactly to that point
Okay.
is why I'm unable to talk, and why, because it needs so much out of the world bravery. It's so and my family is among the rarest of families in the northwest of Pakistan that stood it to so much crackdown in the past at least
Mhm.
1 year, but specifically with the past few months, what has happened with my sister Gulale, who is the co-founder of Awagas and who have done all the work on, he's the founder of the Youth Peace Network and working to prevent young people to be recruited from the military groups. What has happened with her as she has faced online campaigns, she has faced death threats, blasphemy campaigns against her. She was illegally detained. She was disappeared by the state, disappeared for more than 40 hours, where none of our family members knew where she is. She was missing. The state
And my
disappeared her.
understanding is that if she gets accused of blasphemy, that's the consequence is death, no?
Yes, the penalty is death penalty. But and what recently she's currently at this moment she's facing terrorism and sedition cases against her,
Mhm.
multiple sedition and terrorism cases. The reason, and she's also put on exit control list, which is a note.
Sorry, what control list?
Exit control list, which is
Exit
a
control.
note, yeah, which doesn't allow anyone to travel outside the country. So
Got
it's,
it.
it's a
Got it.
travel ban on
Mhm.
her. And the travel is preventing her from traveling outside of the country. And the only reason is to stop her from speaking about her work and about the human rights situation in Pakistan. The current cases against, that accuses of her terrorism is because she spoke about the sexual violence by the Pakistan military in the conflict zones and during the counterterrorism operations in the northwest of Pakistan. And she brought those stories to the mainstream media. The
What was
moment
that? Were girls getting raped or
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
Mm.
women getting raped, barging into their homes,
Mhm.
uh, violating their privacy, violating their dignity. And
Mhm.
what happened was that in this year, in January 2019, there was a video that became viral in which a young boy raised the issue of military personnel barging into his home and harassing his mother. He recorded this, video. It was all, and Gulali actually organized a delegation of women who traveled to North Waziristan to show solidarity with the women who spoke about against the harassment by the military. But also, when the delegation traveled there, they met several other women who shared similar stories, and some of them recorded their stories, and they wanted these stories to be brought to the mainstream media. And definitely one thing I want to mention: that traveling to Waziristan and to the northwest of Pakistan, to these tribal areas, is not easy. Even locals cannot easily travel there, and it was the first ever time in the history of Pakistan that the delegation of women went there to meet other women. It never happened. So it was really like a history in the making, that women going to show solidarity with other women. And what happened, of course, when these women and when, Gulale and these other members of the delegation brought these stories to the mainstream media, the military establishment was not happy with that at all. They did every attempt to silence the family who actually spoke about it the first time, but also but also we see that the time when Gulali brought up start bringing these stories and issues to the mainstream media, she has been charged of terrorism and sedition. And after that, the law enforcement agencies have been raiding our house in Islamabad in order to arrest her. There have been several raids, more than 4 raids in our home where our parents and our younger sister live. And the raids would happen most of the time in the middle of the night, where more than 50 to 60 personnel, law enforcement personnel, would just come attack our home in more than 10 to 15 vehicles each time. And they would just search everything in our home, whether it was car or whether it's personal wardrobe or whether everything. And they snatched our family's phone, our parents and our sister phones. The CCTV system that was installed in our home for my family security was taken away by them without producing any legal documents for taking all these equipments and for taking away any phones. And in one of the raids, they abducted our family driver who has been working with our family for some years. He was physically tortured and toxins were injected into his body because they wanted to know the whereabouts of my sister Gulali, because she is currently forced into hiding at this time.
Mhm.
And when the driver was released after that, a very close friend of Gulali was illegally abducted. He was tortured and electrocuted for more than 13 hours. Like literally, while he was handcuffed, electrical shocks were given to him. Um,
Saba, why are they so threatened? Why are they so threatened by two very bright women starting an organization called Aware Girls and trying to organize youth to actually create a more peaceful society? Why is that so threatening to them?
it is so threatening because, one is that it's very yeah, like talking about these issues, like the usual image of the northwest of Pakistan are women, are conservative women, and not
This is
speaking up,
also where
right?
Malala came from as well, right?
Malala, exactly. And actually, in fact, Malala used to say attending one of our training program before she was shot. So she's a trainee of Aware Girls.
Mhm.
So definitely it's the same area, but overall, you know, it's not something that people will see that, in the northwest of Pakistan, women coming forward and speaking up. And it's not very like Gulali's image or our image is not like, a typical girl from the northwest of Pakistan in terms of maybe like, not covering our head, let's say. It's not, it's very unusual. People expect us to be in the traditional roles.
Are you required to cover?
Yeah, this is a very traditional requirement to have this. And
But
also
not a
like,
burqa, not a burqa.
no, no, not a burqa. Burqa is
Mm,
not our culture. It's come from Saudi Arabia. It's the
mhm,
colonization and all that from that. But it is our
mhm.
culture is to have a chadar, which is a piece of cloth and to cover. And when we don't do that, and when you're a different person, just in terms of like this, but also someone who support, who is working on women's rights, who is so vocal, who is not scared, and who is still, who is in this male dominant and this very patriarchal society, when you don't support the patriarchy, but you are speaking up against and also speaking and questioning military is, in itself in Pakistan is not easy. It's very, no one can dare to even question the military, the wrongdoings of the military. It's not that easy to even question. So questioning in the first, and then when you're actually telling the stories of sexual assaults by the Pakistan military to the world is something that there is then of course no other excuse for them. But they are scared that this is a war. Like sexual assault is an international war crime. It is recognized as an international war crime. And if we are speaking about this issue and we are bringing it to the international media, that it means there will be international investigation maybe, or like, people will talk about it, and they will ask for accountability or not doing, not being involved into war crimes. So definitely this is something that they don't want to. And it took these women from the tribal areas, it took them almost 2 decades, because this war on terror is going on in Pakistan for almost two decades. So it took the women of Pakistan and the tribal areas almost 2 decades to speak up about this issue. It's the first ever time that women from these tribal areas are speaking up. And
It's amazing. It's amazing that
yeah,
they
this is the
have
Me
that
Too. See, this is the Me Too movement of
right,
Pakistan.
right. Wow.
And how you see differently the Me Too movement in the West and in the US. But this is where the women who have never been to school, but they are still recording, they're still telling these stories, because enough is enough. It's
Well, I
been
think it's what's powerful now about this moment in time, because I think women all over the planet are supporting each other in finding their voice and speaking up about what the reality is. And obviously women, there's different realities, but it's also very similar realities, even though,
uh-huh.
you know,
Yes, yeah,
uh,
it's true that I would like to mention one story that is very powerful. When Gulali traveled to Waziristan, to North Khassor in January, in which there is this one woman who is illiterate, an old woman, and every time the military would harass her, she would draw a line on a piece of paper, and she showed this picture to this delegation. It's a small torn piece of paper. There are 25 lines drawn on it.
hmm.
Just imagine going through this, and then she was forced, she was like, okay, she cannot take all this, and she left that area. But
What
also
kind of harassment, in what ways were they harassing
they
her?
were different. These women have been faced a lot, barging into homes, violating their privacy, violating their dignity. It's definitely, it's a lot that these women have already taken in the name of searching houses, in the name of, like, a lot of main things. But
Mhm.
seeing the courage of this woman and the way they're documenting, I think it's really important that we talk about. It's really important because definitely we just cannot allow you know um, um, an institution to do this to women, and especially then when they're doing a lot of these things in the name of counterterrorism, and then in the name of peace. It is definitely injustice. It's definitely something that the international community should question this.
Well, the thing that's very, so my last guest was Stephanie Savelle, and they have been documenting the post 9/11 wars, and
Uh-huh.
specifically the amount of money that the United States has been spending, which is significant. Obviously,
Yes.
my
Yes.
country has spent more than the next 7 to 10 countries combined. And in the name of making the world safer for the United States and the world safer in general. But the reality is nothing has gotten safer. It's gotten less safe. And so listening to this kind of story, it's like, it's so clear that if people really wanted to make things safer, they would support somebody like Gululai. They would support that kind of initiative. They would support a youth peace network going into the madrasas and talking to people about why they wouldn't necessarily want to be jihadists. That would make a lot of sense as
Yeah.
a peace initiative, but that's not what has been supported. I think by my government, which is I'm sure is part of the problem here.
I think it's, to this, there are a lot of Western countries that are actually for them, um, the weapons, producing guns and weapons and selling them is a huge business for them. And I think it's really important, it's really important that the world think about, the Western world as well, that what they want to do already, because of these in the name of counterterrorism, in the name of security initiatives, millions of dollars have already been invested into more weapons, into more guns, more bombs. And and every all the amount of money, like every penny that is spent on these guns, missiles, bombs, is injustice to girls who wants to go to school, or to people like Gulali, who is a peace builder and who is labeled as a terrorist in her own country, although she's an internationally celebrated human rights defender and activist. But the way she has been framed, or and the way she has been, kind of because the state, Pakistan state, is afraid of her voice. But that there are, I think, in the Western world, the business of war and making money is such a lucrative business, but this has to be diverted. This has to be, this has to be changed. And as you mentioned already about Silla, that you had a talk with her. So here I would like to mention some figures from Silla's book, in which she writes that the book is Business Plan for Peace, in which she writes that the armed conflict causes massive economic losses every year, but peace building and peacekeeping are very grossly underfunded. The spending in 2015 on peace building was 6.8 billion, and peacekeeping is 8.27 billion, and together they just represent 2% of the economic losses caused by the conflict. So this book, demonstrates the total cost of scaling up the most effective systems to prevent war over a period of 10 years would cost under 2 billion. So, the figures. But also, in this book says that currently we spend $9 billion annually on ice cream. So
On
this is
what? I'm
about
sorry. On
9 billion annually on ice cream.
on ice cream.
So I, always say, and I always mention this, that I like ice cream, and I would like to eat ice cream in a peaceful world. So in terms of that, yeah, I think, the money that is being spent on, whether it's a counterterrorism initiative or whether it's, um, on this war on terror, it needs to be local communities and local peace builders needs to be engaged, and they need to be involved in these processes. What type of funding should go, what type of how, because also we, in the case of Golali, we clearly see that it's the government and it's the state which is so scared of peace builders, because they are scared that that the war crimes that they are doing will be exposed, or they will be they won't be able to cover up those those crimes that they're doing in the name of terror, or in the name of this war on terror. So I think it's all together that yes, the international community should make the governments accountable for this war on terror, that what they're doing, how what is the output. And in case of Pakistan, I clearly see that this space for civic society is shrinking, but also maybe actually want to point out towards the how the state has supported militants like Osama bin Laden, who was hiding in Pakistan. And it's not me saying, but it's one of the former security agency representative who has written in a book, and who has mentioned it in multiple occasions, that it was the state who gave support to bin Laden. It was the state who gave support to Ehsanullah Ehsan, who is another terrorist and a mastermind of the attack on school children, in which more than 140 children were killed. That was 2014. So this man Ehsanullah Ehsan has been is treated like a state guest. No legal processes against him, nothing. Hafiz Saeed, which is another terrorist, and who is a well-known, like internationally recognized terrorist, he's also being a lot of support, given support by the state. But Pakistani state is doing crackdown against human rights defenders, against journalists who are speaking up, against judges, anyone, because in this current government in Pakistan, it is very much controlled, you know, uh, by other state, institutions. It's not a very open democracy, and that's where the problem is, that there is crackdown.
So let me ask you something. The name of your organization, one of the organizations, is Aware Girls,
Yes.
and this podcast has consistently. I mean, we feel pretty clear that there's a strong correlation between empowering women
Mhm.
and building peace on the planet, and in fact that if we got gender right, in fact, we would
Yes.
have a much more peaceful planet. We would not be supporting militarism to the extent that we are, and I'm saying we, the human community.
Hmm.
I'm just interested in your thoughts on that. Does that seem true to you? And what would happen? What would happen specifically, as for Pakistan as a case in point, if women really, if there really were true gender equality in Pakistan? What would happen to militarism in Pakistan, in your view?
I think if there is gender equality, of course, it will positively impact the situation. If there is free space and an enabling environment where women can speak up, and where uh, they can talk about these issues, they can also have proper legal remedies. if there are proper legal remedies, of course, I think it's going to be really thrive. And of course, the women's rights movement in Pakistan is affected by this current administration and this current government, because if there is no free civic space, where, usually the groups which are marginalized groups are, they are affected in a negative way. So similarly, because now there is so much crackdown generally on civil society, it's the feminist and the women's rights movement who are also getting like more intense crackdown, and more not having free spaces, because as we see generally in society, the group, or the marginalized groups affected most. Like in Pakistan, what happened when there was on 8th of March, which is International Women's Day, there were thousands of women who came on the streets, who protested and was rallying for women's rights. But what happened? The government of Northwest of Pakistan, and also overall, there was a resolution and the parliament against this march and against this rally. So you can imagine that it was again history making, that so many thousands of women coming up forward, speaking for their rights. It was like it's been almost more than 3 years that I live in New York, and when I was in Pakistan, I couldn't see this kind of amazing and brilliant movement when I was there, and only in such short period of time you can see that so many women coming forward, and instead of celebrating those women, instead of showing support to them, instead of listening to them, there is a resolution that against these women. It's
But
really.
it's interesting. It sounds like you see a change. You see that you think that women in Pakistan are waking up and coming together more and protesting more and speaking out, even if there are resolutions against them.
Yes, they are. As there are women. There are women lawyers. There are women activists. There are women, journalists who are, instead of being so much crackdown and repression, they are coming forward. They're, speaking up. Uh, I have been working, for years. I have been working with women, and I have been working to empower young women into citizens of equal rights and responsibilities. I have seen that they are fighting, the extremists. They are, I when I was working to also strengthen the governance structures through through the effective participation of women and girls in these processes. So when I was working, we built the capacity of women in so that they can participate in the political processes and also in the democratic process of the country. And back in 2015, there were 10 women that we trained. They ran for election. They won the local elections in Pakistan. So not only challenging that extremist narrative, but also taking away space from those extremist narratives, and being there in those processes, in the decision making processes, and in the policy making processes. And when these women came forward and running those elections, in some villages, it was first ever time that women were even running for elections and participating in these processes. But what is happening also with this current government, we have seen that the number of women in the policy making has been starkly decreased. Like every day there are
Is that because of global authoritarianism
well, it's because of the current government. It's because of this,
in
administration
Pakistan?
in Pakistan, which is not, pro women's rights, which is not, and a lot of these meetings, like, every day you follow their social media and the updates that they give on about the meetings or anything, they're all male. Like, there is in majority of these meetings, there is 0% of women in these meetings. So definitely this current government in Pakistan
Mhm.
is not very supportive towards women, or there are no spaces, in the policy making
Okay,
process.
so uh, what you have on your plate, what you're taking on, is so immense and obviously needs a lot of support. And what do you feel like? What gives you the most hope, and what feels like the greatest support that are moving things in the direction that you think they need to go?
So when I see, so many young women and young men speaking up for their rights, and still, coming forward, that definitely gives me hope. I have seen a lot of women. I've seen a lot of men coming forward and doing amazing work in Pakistan. And I think, that is definitely one thing that gave me hope, that even instead of like so much going on currently, but also the environment that we all grew up in, the conflicts that we all, mostly like the people in the northwest of Pakistan, the younger generation have lived in conflict for years and years,
Their entire
and
lives,
still,
right?
yeah,
I mean, really, their entire life.
exactly, our entire lives, and still they want peace. They're working for peace. They don't want to be engaged in violent activities. Like, for example, currently there is this one grassroots movement rising up in Pakistan, which is called Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, which means Pashtun protection movement. This is a grassroots movement that is asking for, for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, that is asking to make sure that the people who are enforcedly disappeared are being brought in the court system. And this, in this movement, there are a lot of younger generation who are the face of this movement. So definitely, when they are engaged so non-violently, they have held demonstrations in which more than 40,000 and 50,000 people have come up, in one single demonstration.
Mhm.
And the record is that not even a single flower pot has been, broken. Like, it's so peaceful. It's so
Mhm.
peaceful.
Mhm.
So definitely, it's really, it's really good to see, and it's really good to see that yes, they are the hope of Pakistan. And Gulali actually is also facing all this crackdown because she showed solidarity with this movement, with this PTM Pashtun Tafiz movement. And she's not, she's not, the leader of the movement, but but they are so scared. The state is so scared of brave voices like Gulali, because they know that if such a non-violent movement is happening, and if the world knows, about it, and this movement have more credible voices, and if people internationally start showing solidarity with this movement, the military will be in trouble, because military in itself, the spokesperson of the military, which is, DGISPR, known as DGISPR, Major Asif, Asif Ghafoor. In April, he held a
Sorry, what was that? I didn't.
uh, DGISPR, Asif Ghafoor is his name, and
Ah,
he's the spokesperson of the armed forces.
okay, okay.
He held a press conference in April, and he said that time is up. Time is up for the people of the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement. And then he warned them, that you have all the liberty. Just imagine, you have all the liberty of being nonviolent, okay? You know, and then he was like, your time is up, and there will be crackdown against you. And then there were videos on YouTube started emerging. And in these YouTube videos, it is clearly mentioned that the military will have crackdown against Gulali and, against the other two leaders of the movement, who are the parliamentarians. And only less than a month after that, there were two cases against Gulali, accusing her of terrorism, and now she's forced into hiding. And the two parliamentarians of this movement are being arrested, and they are in jail. They are not being released at all. We don't see a chance of them being released. Every time they have a court date, the judge is on vacation, the judge is sick, the judge is, has an off day, and the judge never even listens to them. So the justice system in Pakistan is not transparent, is so much influence. And that's where I see, to answer to your question, that where I see hope. So I see hope in all these people who have been, like, there is so much crackdown against them by the strongest institution of the country, but they still are standing up.
Mhm.
No one has been, um, said that, okay, we don't want to work for peace anymore, because we cannot, of course, this institution is so strong, and we cannot stand up to this crackdown. Like, my family has been threatened so much, being harassed so much in so many ways, including my younger sister, who is a lookalike of our sister Gulali.
Mhm.
These agencies told her that we were about to abduct you, but then we realized that you're not her. And they interrogated her, they cross-questioned her, because they thought that she is her. She was being followed, even if she would go to buy vegetables or milk. She was being followed by multiple cars and multiple people. And she was still don't, of course, our parents are still, when the media outlets are interviewing my parents are saying that I'm proud of my daughters, that we are proud of our daughters. We are proud of the work that they are doing, although their life is in hell these days.
Mhm.
They don't have, they're not living a normal life from on. It's been now more than 90 days. And they try to socially isolate them, but they're everybody, the people in Pakistan, they're still standing very strong, because one, we are standing on the right side of the history. We stood up for a cause, which is human rights and peace, and we will continue. Even our sister is forced into hiding. We don't know, definitely a lot about her at this time. We don't know about her whereabouts. Our younger sister has to be relocated to a foreign country, because it's impossible for her to live in Pakistan anymore. And she has to start her life from scratch just because she's someone's sister. Our parents, they even cannot talk to us, normally, because their communication is being surveilled, is being watched, taped, everything. I just barely talk to them, and cannot talk about a lot of things at all, because they will be in trouble, their safety and security, and they're old. My father is a human rights activist, so and he has been to jail. He was accused of blasphemy before 9/11, actually, when he spoke out against the Taliban and the militant groups. He went to jail on that. So he stood up, but my mother, who is a housewife, and she has nothing to do with what my sister says, outside, or what my activism my sister is involved in. But she's just being dragged into all this just because she's a mother, just because she's a mother of
Mhm.
Gulali. She's
Mhm.
going to court every week.
Yeah.
She's fighting the case,
Right.
and that's, when you asked me earlier about support of my mother, and I told you that I think it will come later. That when my sister was arrested in February, because she was protesting against the brutal murder of a member of the PTM, of the Pashtun Tahafuz movement. That member was killed in broad daylight and was brutally killed. So my sister was, participating in this protest, and my sister Gulali was arrested from that protest. She was taken to a police station, and then she was disappeared for 40 hours. My
Mhm.
family didn't know about her whereabouts at all. We were told that she is being tortured, and a lot of, like, stories that were told to us, and we had no idea what's going on. But it was our mother who took the lead,
Mhm.
and my mother and my younger sister Shola, who was there and who was searching for her from one police station to another police station, from one government office to another government office, and who were advocating for her safe recovery. So definitely, uh, you know uh, it's women like my sister or my mother who, instead of all this is
You.
happening, but and me, but maybe because I'm a kind of undermining, no, not that, but I'm not saying it because I think I'm at least comparatively uh in a safer part of the world.
How did you come to be in New York?
It's a very personal story that I might not be able to share a lot, but you know, uh, the reason why I came to New York was I was in a situation in which I had to save my life and I had no other option.
Mhm.
But I had to come to New York because I have siblings here. Yeah, so I was in a situation in which I had to escape, and the only option was New York, because I have family who could support me and who could help me in escape.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was but still, I'm here. I'm in a position, in a much safer position, and I think that's why I'm kind of giving more credit to my family, who is back there on the ground, who is going through so much, and my sister, who is just only because she speaks truth to power, she's facing so much. So yeah, definitely, working for peace generally is not easy in Pakistan. People even who are associated with you, friends, even, like, there are friends who were tweeting in support of Gulali when these cases of, like, this terrorism were filed against her, and they received calls, they received death threats over phones, that they should not tweet anything in support of her.
Mhm.
Otherwise they will be in trouble. So
Mm.
currently, it's very hard time for
There's
human rights
a lot of
defenders.
repression. So, Saba, we are hitting our time boundary in terms of the hour, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to say anything that you want at the, like to summarize, or to say anything that stands out to you that you want people most to anything that is in conclusion, from your point of view.
uh my conclusion is that there is, is I think, my message to everybody is that, although there is, not only in Pakistan, overall, the generally, the rise of nationalism and authoritarian, we can see that is very growing. I mean, we can see it in many different countries,
For
but
now.
it's for
For
now.
now.
And I think it's very important for everyone not to be silent and still to speak up, because if we choose to be silent, when we think that it's really hard, maybe when it's over, then we will speak. I think it's not gonna solve any issue. I think it's not better for the world. It's not better generally. So my message is that all the people all around should speak up, whether they're in the US or in the Western world or in Pakistan or in similarly other countries. It's very important to be persistent in our causes, even at the cost of whatever comes. Mm. So definitely, it's very important. And also, I think the responsibility of the people who are not living in the in the conflict affected areas. I think responsibility comes on their shoulders, to show solidarity with those people,
Mm,
to listen to them, to talk more, and to actually give them spaces so that they can talk about these issues. They can bring these issues to the international forums,
mhm.
because at least in Pakistan, there is so much, crackdown even on media. People cannot even speak about my sister's case, or about any other crackdown. So it's very important that people internationally give more spaces, to the people who come from certain situations.
And if they want to follow you or know what's happening, what's the best way to pay attention?
So I have a Twitter account that I post updates on. I believe that's my own name. It's Saba Ismail. Yeah, and my email address is also, anyone can reach me out on my email address,
We can
which is,
post that. We'll post that with the episode if you like. Anything that
yeah,
you want to
yeah,
support.
yeah. So my email address and Twitter both. They can follow my Twitter for more updates and can send an email for having more updates.
And what about
Because
Aware Girls? How do if people are interested? Is that one and the same? Is you and Gululai is the same? I mean, it is. Yeah. If they wanted to follow Aware Girls, is that a separate organization or is it the two of you?
Well, there are people, there are other, we have, active board members, we have staff and team that are working on the ground. They are still working for women's rights and, for peace on the ground. So definitely, but for any information, at least for now, for Awegos, they can contact me,
Okay.
because there is so much crackdown on Aware Girls, in Pakistan, and on associates, that their communication is being so watched that it can that it can pose risk to a lot of people in
Hmm.
Pakistan. So for now, it's more better to contact me for information for Aware Girls, Youth Peace Network, any other updates.
Well, I hope, I just, what you're doing is so amazing, so courageous. And I guess, maybe it's because I'm older than you, and the mother in me is thinking, and what are you doing to take care of yourself?
Uh,
uh,
yeah, it's a question that a lot of our friends and supporters have asked me in the previous 3 months. And a lot of my friends have pushed me to do a lot of things, but it's very hard.
yes.
It's extremely hard to be in such a situation in which you have the
Well, that
responsibility.
can't be more pressure too. I mean, I don't ask it like that, but
Yeah,
I guess I think because what you're doing is so critical, it is hard. It's hard to know how does one take care of oneself given the kind of pressures, And
yeah,
one way you take care of yourself is that you don't try and do it all by yourself, that actually all of us are paying, get do this podcast, pay attention so that people are paying attention to what's going on, because I think that particularly around the world, I think women as a group are starting to support each other more, paying attention to, the similarities in stories and wanting to see,
Yeah.
and many men too. But
Yes.
I think women as a group, are needing to do it, and I'm wanting to support them in doing it. And
Thank you so much.
yeah.
Definitely a lot of our friends and, stakeholders and partners have showed immense support in the past 3 months,
Mhm.
and I think, it's really it's so incredible to see. And I think I'm so blessed, and my family is so blessed, my sister is so blessed to have so many people that are, that they are supporting her, they're supporting this cause. They're definitely not supporting, one individual based on, being their favorite, but because they want to support this cause. So the support that I have seen from my sister is remarkable, and I'm so thankful. Like, it will be very hard for me to thank, and to name the any, friends, organization, or institutions, but yeah, and that
Well,
definitely
because
gives
it's
me a
not
lot of
just
hope.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
not just about, obviously, your sister and you are a symbol of a whole different approach that can be taken to peace building. That the money that's been put into the military, that my country's put into the military, that other countries, it hasn't ended up making this world safer, but actually doing the kind of work you're talking about, I think has the potential to make it safer. So,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That that's why I want to talk. And I mentioned about investing in peace and investing in young peace builders, investing in local peace builders, and investing in older as peace builders like you, who are playing their role, and giving spaces and voices to people like me, and other peace builders, of course. And I think it's the investment in terms of money is very important. That where the money goes. Recently, the U.S. government have passed the Global Fragility Act, and I think it's also important that the
Global
Fragility Act.
Fragility Act. Hmm.
So, if the money that goes through this act, I think that also the people in the U.S. should advocate that this money should go through the local organizations, to the local institutions, to
Mhm.
the local partners for peace building.
Mhm.
For the approaches should be, I believe, locally led, because the local people know the realities. They know they have they have the
Right,
solutions,
right.
instead of just targeting or investing, giving out weapons to someone. This money should be used very tactfully, and in consultations.
Mhm.
So definitely, it's very important, because it's the money, power, resources play a huge role in shaping, these issues, or shaping, the solution towards these issues.
Well, anyway, I really thank you so much for your time and for joining us and for all of your courage. It's so inspirational. And yeah, and I hope this lots of people listen to you far and wide on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Susan. Thank you for your time.